A voice buried under stone. We open with silence, not the silence of an empty place, but the silence of a 1,000-year-old message waiting for us to finally understand it. For generations, scholars stared at these symbols and declared them unreadable, undecipherable, the last great script humanity could never unlock. But then, against all expectations, one inscription spoke, clear, precise, historical. On the day 9/12/2016, Lord Bird Jaguar captured his enemy alive. A sentence impossible to imagine a century ago. Tonight, we uncover how the script of the Maya, once considered uncrackable, finally told its story. Act 1. Empire of Signs. The Lost Language and the Ancient Genius. The Jungle of Cities. Our journey begins in the lowland jungles of Mesoamerica, a realm where stone rises above the forest canopy like the ribs of some ancient sleeping titan. Tikal, Copan, Palenque, Calakmul. These were not ruins to the Maya. They were vibrant capitals, each a center of politics, mathematics, astronomy, and theology. These were master architects of both stone and knowledge. The Maya mind. The Maya measured time not in years, but in vast cosmic cycles. They tracked the path of Venus with error margins of less than a day, using nothing but naked-eye astronomy. They independently invented the mathematical zero around the 4th century CE, centuries before its full adoption in Europe. This was a world where mathematics was sacred. Time itself was divine. To write something down was to make it eternal. So the Maya created one of the most visually spectacular writing systems ever devised. The script that should have been simple to read, but wasn't. The Maya wrote everywhere, on pottery, facade panels, jade plaques, bone carvings, staircases, murals, and above all, their codices, beautifully painted books made from bark paper. 4 of these books survive today: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Groyer codices. Inside them are tables predicting eclipses, ritual calendars, astronomical cycles, complex knowledge far ahead of its time. And yet, for centuries after the Spanish conquest, no one could read them. Not a sentence, not a phrase, not a single personal name. Why? Not because the script was too complex, but because our assumptions about it were catastrophically wrong. The silence begins. The Landa paradox. The year is 1562. In the Yucatan Peninsula, a Franciscan bishop named Diego de Landa led a campaign against what he believed were pagan practices. In a single act, now considered one of the greatest intellectual tragedies in history, he ordered the burning of countless Maya manuscripts. Most of Maya literature vanished in hours. But paradoxically, in an attempt to record their culture, Landa wrote a document called Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán. Inside it was something extraordinary and disastrously misleading, a chart he believed was the Maya alphabet. It wasn't an alphabet. It wasn't even close to one. But it contained the seed of truth, disguised as an error. and for nearly 4 centuries, this seed lay buried. The early explorers and the first big mistake. Fast forward to the 19th century. Explorers like John Lloyd Stevens and Frederick Catherwood brought the Maya back into Western consciousness through detailed drawings of temples and glyphs. But early scholars misread the script's artistic complexity. It felt too pictorial, too ornate to encode sounds. Thus emerged the dominant belief: the Maya script must be ideographic, a system of pictures, not words. This assumption became the greatest barrier to decipherment. The stakes. What was locked inside the stone? The Maya were prolific writers. Their monuments spoke constantly, recording wars, dynasties, alliances, rituals, mathematics, astronomy. If we could read their texts, we could reconstruct entire centuries of political history. But without understanding the script, the Maya civilization remained a beautiful mystery, grand, brilliant, silent. And so, generation after generation, scholars tried to crack the code, but they were trapped inside a conceptual prison they didn't know existed. It would take a revolution, born far from the Maya world, to break it open. How one wrong idea blocked all progress. The ideographic mirage. By the late 19th and early 20th century, the great stone cities of the Maya had captured the imagination of the world. But the writing carved on their monuments remained an impenetrable riddle. Scholars believed they had found the answer. The script was ideographic, a system of pictures conveying concepts, not sounds. The logic seemed sound at first glance. The glyphs looked like images, faces, animals, celestial symbols. They were beautifully rendered, almost miniature sculptures in stone. But this assumption would become the single greatest obstacle in deciphering the script. Because if you assume a writing system has no phonetics, you will never discover its phonetics. The authority of Eric Thompson. At the center of this intellectual dead end stood one man, Sir J. Eric Thompson. Brilliant, dedicated, charismatic, and absolutely convinced that the Maya were a peaceful, priestly people who recorded only calendrical and mythological information. Thompson believed the Maya had no interest in recording political history. No conquests, no dynasties, no personal stories. Only ritual cycles and cosmology. His prestige was immense. His writings shaped an entire generation of scholarship. As a result, Maya rulers were seen as priests. Maya art was seen as symbolic. Maya texts were dismissed as ceremonial lists, and phonetic readings were ignored as fantastical. The tragedy? Thompson's vision was compelling, romantic, and completely wrong. The forgotten clue, the Landa alphabet. While Western scholars built complex theories, one crucial clue lay thousands of miles away in a dusty archive. Diego de Landa had recorded what he believed was a letter-for-letter correspondence between Spanish sounds and Maya glyphs. Most researchers dismissed it as nonsense. They were right and wrong. The chart wasn't an alphabet, but it wasn't useless. It contained syllables, consonant-vowel sounds, misinterpreted as letters. The mistake was obvious in hindsight, but invisible under the ideographic paradigm. Early attempts at decipherment. Despite the intellectual roadblocks, several pioneers attempted to break through. Cyrus Taunus. In the late 19th century, he proposed that Maya glyphs encoded phonetic elements, but his ideas were overshadowed by Thomson's dominance. Benjamin Whorf, a linguist who suggested that the script contained phonetic signs, though his work was speculative and lacked consistent methodology. Paul Schellhas identified and cataloged Maya deity glyphs, creating a foundation later scholars would rely on. These attempts were stepping stones, but without a systematic approach, the mountain remained unclimbed. A scientist outside the paradigm, Tetiana Proskuriakov. Then, in the mid-20th century, a brilliant architectural drafter named Tetiana Proskuriakov changed everything. Working at the Peabody Museum at Harvard, she approached Maya inscriptions not as ideograms, but as chronological records. She noticed patterns, repeating glyphs accompanied by dates carved on stelae. She realized that these sequences corresponded to historical events, births, accessions, and deaths of rulers, not rituals, not myths, actual biographies. Her breakthrough showed that Maya cities were ruled by dynasties, living, competing, warring. Proskuriakov cracked the door open. But the full breakthrough needed something else, something only a linguist could see. The Cold War effect, an academic iron curtain. During the early Cold War, Western and Soviet scholars rarely exchanged ideas. This intellectual divide created a strange ripple effect in Maya studies. In the West, Thomson's ideographic model dominated. But behind the Iron Curtain, researchers were unburdened by his prestige. They had access to the same microfilm copies of the codices. They had the same drawings and photographs, but they approached them with entirely different assumptions. And this difference, this freedom from academic dogma, would change Maya studies. The stage is set for the breakthrough. By the 1940s, three elements were in place: a corpus of inscriptions, thousands of carvings documented but unread, a flawed but vital clue, Landa's mysterious alphabet, and a paradigm ready to collapse, Proskuriakov's work proving the texts were historical. All that was missing was someone who could see through the noise. Someone who had the training, the intuition, and the courage to challenge the entire academic establishment. And in 1952, far from the Maya world, in a Soviet apartment filled with cigarette smoke and piles of linguistic notes, the right mind appeared. The mind that would break the code. Yuri Knorozov and the Breakthrough. The unlikely hero. The man who would crack the Maya script was neither an archaeologist, nor a Mesoamerican specialist, nor someone who had ever walked among the ruins he would one day illuminate. His name was Yuri Valentinovich Knorozov. Born in 1922 in Kharkiv, raised in a family that valued scholarship and discipline, he became a prodigy in linguistics and ethnography. By his early 20s, he could read ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, and Chinese. He understood the deep structures of scripts, how sound, symbol, and meaning weave into language. He possessed a rare combination of abilities: the discipline of a scientist, the intuition of a cryptanalyst, and the humility to question everything. The Berlin Incident, a codex in the ashes. In 1945, at the end of the Second World War, a young Knorozov found himself in Berlin as part of a Soviet intelligence unit. There, in a damaged library,
he found a book containing facsimiles of the 3 known Maya codices. The Berlin Codex publication, thought lost, had survived the fires. He later famously remarked, "The Maya script can be read. Any writing made by humans can be read by humans." This was the moment the Maya script gained its future decipherer. A mind outside the dogma. Back in the USSR, Knorozov began analyzing the codices using methods drawn from structural linguistics. He knew nothing of Thompson's prestige, nothing of Western ideological battles. He was free. He approached the script like a linguist, not an archaeologist. Patterns, frequency, repetition, substitution. And he dared to re-examine the most ridiculed text in Maya studies, the Landa alphabet. Others dismissed it as nonsense. Knorozov saw something different. The insight. This is not an alphabet. It is a syllabary. Here was the breakthrough that changed everything. Landa believed Maya glyphs represented letters of the Spanish alphabet. He asked Maya scribes to write A, B, C, D. But the Maya writing system does not work that way. Knorozov realized the glyphs Landa recorded did not stand for individual letters, but for syllables. Consonant plus vowel, CV. This single insight cracked open 4 centuries of confusion. The Maya script is a mixed system. Logograms, syllabograms, phonetic complements. Suddenly, patterns emerged everywhere. How Maya writing actually functions. To understand the revolution Knorozov initiated, we need to see the script the way he saw it. Step 1. The glyph block. A Maya word is often written inside a block, a square container combining several signs. The large central symbol may be a logogram. Smaller attached signs are syllabograms. Step 2. Logogram example. Take the glyph for keen, sun, day. It is a logogram, a symbol representing a full word. Step 3. Adding phonetic complements. Around the logogram, the Maya adds small syllabic signs. For example, ki and na. These syllables don't change the meaning, they confirm the pronunciation, just as Japanese combines kanji with hiragana. Step 4. Reading a name. Consider the name of the famous ruler Pakal of Palenque. It may appear as a logogram of a shield, the meaning of his name, followed by syllabic signs, pa, ka, la. Combine them, and the reading becomes obvious. Once scholars accepted phonetics, names began to reveal themselves. And with names came events, and with events came history. The script was no longer silent. The paper that shook the world. In 1952, Knorozov published Ancient Writing of Central America in the journal Soviet Ethnography. It was a scholarly missile fired across the ideological divide. He demonstrated how Landa's signs are syllables, how syllable combinations create phonetic spellings, how logograms work with complements, how names can be deciphered, how the script functions structurally like other mixed systems.
The Maya script was no longer mysterious. It was readable. But the West did not celebrate. Quite the opposite. The War of the Decipherers. Eric Thompson, at that time the unquestioned authority in Maya archaeology, was furious. He argued that Knorozov's work was simplistic, mistaken, even ideologically tainted by Soviet thinking. His response was swift and harsh. Thompson insisted the script had no phonetics.
He dismissed Knorozov as a young Russian who didn't understand the nuance of Maya culture. But the tide had begun to turn. Other scholars, especially younger ones, started to see the brilliance in Knorozov's method. The proof arrived. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, evidence supporting phonetic decipherment grew rapidly. Tatyana Proskuryakov. Her analysis of dynastic histories fit perfectly with Knorozov's phonetic patterns. Floyd Lounsbury, a linguist who confirmed many phonetic readings using comparative Mayan languages. Linda Sheely and David Stewart, their workshops in Texas unlocked entire sequences of texts. Stewart, still in his teens, identified phonetic substitutions that proved beyond doubt that the script was syllabic. By the late 1980s, the debate was over. Knorozov had been right all along. His method unlocked the script. And suddenly, the stones of the Maya world began to speak. Names, wars, alliances, captives, architects, scribes, astronomers, kings, queens. The Maya were no longer a mystical, silent people. They were a civilization with a voice, one we could now finally hear.
The first voices. Once phonetic decipherment was accepted, a torrent of information poured out of the stones of Mesoamerica. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Maya began to speak again. And what they said surprised everyone. This was not a world of peaceful astronomer priests, as Thompson believed. It was a world alive with politics, rivalry, and ambition. A world of kings and queens whose names we now know, and whose deeds we can reconstruct with astonishing precision. Dynasties emerge from stone. Let's begin with the great cities. Each Maya capital carved its own dynastic saga into stelae and temple walls. Tikal. We learned of its early kings like Yaxeb-Hok and later rulers such as Yasao Chan Kawil, who revived the city after decades of defeat. Calakmul. Its long rivalry with Tikal emerged as one of the defining geopolitical struggles of the classic period. We can now read the titles of its Snake Dynasty kings, reconstructing alliances spread across hundreds of kilometers. Palenque, the city of Pakal the Great, whose reign and lineage are now known through inscriptions on the Temple of the Inscriptions and other monuments. These were not anonymous ruins, they were capitals of kingdoms. And through their glyphs, the kings speak directly to us. Wars, captives, victories. One of the greatest surprises unlocked by the decipherment was the vast extent of Maya warfare. The capture glyph, a kneeling prisoner glyph, chab or chak, appears frequently in inscriptions. This was a world where battles determined prestige, legitimacy, and divine favor. We now know which cities fought, who led the armies, and who was taken captive. Some of these captives appear carved on staircases, bound with ropes, their names inscribed beside them. The carved stones are no longer enigmatic art, they are historical documents. Maya queens step forward. Decipherment did more than restore kings, it restored queens. Lady Six Sky of Naranjo. Her name, titles, and deeds were hidden for centuries. Now we know she revitalized her kingdom, led ceremonies, and may even have commanded warriors. Lady Cabell of El Peru Huaca, a queen whose title Kalumte labeled her as a supreme warrior.
These were not symbolic figures, they were political actors, strategists, diplomats, rulers. The decipherment gave them back their identities. Rituals, blood, and time. Maya texts also revealed the sacred logic behind political power. Bloodletting rituals. Glyphs describe how kings and queens offered their own blood to communicate with ancestral beings. Vision serpents. Inscriptions link these rituals to visions believed to open portals between eras. Astronomical precision. Maya scribes recorded complex Venus cycles, eclipse tables, and long chronological narratives tracking events across centuries. Far from the stereotype of a mysterious priesthood, we now see a civilization deeply invested in recording the relationship between heaven, earth, and royal authority. Some texts break the heart. Not all newly read inscriptions tell stories of triumph and kingship. Some speak of collapse, the fall of Dos Pilas. Texts describe political fragmentation, betrayal, and desperate last stands. The abandonment of Copan. Later stelae suggest rising instability, forced labor, and dwindling royal power. Decipherment didn't just resurrect ancient grandeur, it revealed the fragility of Maya states and the human cost behind monumental construction. We now hear individual voices. Perhaps the most extraordinary achievement of decipherment is its humanity. We now know the names of sculptors and scribes, the titles of diplomats, the genealogies of royal families, the dates when children were born and elders passed, the words Maya kings used to describe their victories, the poems and metaphors woven into dedicatory texts. This is no longer a faceless civilization. These are people we can understand, connect, even empathize with. The stones speak in first person. The past speaks in full sentences. The legacy of the breakthrough. By the early 1990s, the phonetic approach was universally accepted. Today, over 90% of known Maya glyphs have been read with scholarly consensus. The decipherment restored a lost literature and returned a stolen voice to millions of Maya descendants living today in Guatemala, Mexico, Belize, and Honduras. The Maya are not a vanished civilization. Their languages survive, their heritage thrives, and thanks to the decipherment, the written words of their ancestors can now speak to them directly. It took the genius of an outsider and the courage of scholars willing to question centuries of assumptions to reveal that the Maya were not silent. Their cities were not mute. Their history was not lost. We were simply asking the wrong questions. From a burned manuscript in the 16th century, to a Soviet linguist reading microfilms in a smoky apartment, to the halls of modern universities, the journey of the Maya script is a story of human persistence, curiosity, and the belief that no voice is beyond recovery. If this journey into the world of ancient writing moved you, if you want to explore more mysteries, decipherments, and archaeological revelations, then join us. Subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who loves history, and continue the adventure with our next deep dive, where another ancient mystery waits to be unlocked. The past is never silent. We just have to learn how to listen.